Good morning. It is 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and you know what that means. It's turtle time. I want to welcome everybody as we take our trip across the world to see how the TSA makes a positive impact for tortoises and freshwater turtles. If you've joined me the last 2 weeks, we've visited North America, where we've seen the positive impacts by our North American Freshwater Turtle Research Group. And then we traveled to Belize, where you got to meet the staff of the Belize Foundation for Research and Environmental Education right there, live from the jungle in Belize. So I hope you all have enjoyed those previous webinars. I know last week's I was really excited about, and I thought it was so great to be able to share with you the work that they perform for the Central American river turtle in Belize by those who perform the work. You know, every week that I do these webinars and I put them together, I'm always just amazed by the work performed by those in our programs and our collaborative partners. It really just it fuels me. It makes me just want to continue preserving these amazing animals and continue to share with you the passion that has inspired these people to dedicate their lives for the conservation and preservation of tortoises and freshwater turtles. I'm looking over. Thank you all for joining in. It's great to see you. I recognize all of those names. And so the first thing that I do want to, of course, talk to you about, and it's not a shameless promotion as you're used to me doing, but it is about our 18th annual and first ever virtual symposium on the conservation and biology of tortoises and freshwater turtles. This is going to be truly a global event. Abstracts were due this past Monday, and let me tell you, we were inundated by abstracts. And one of the amazing things that we saw was people who may have never had a chance before or may never get to come to one of our symposiums in person, submitting abstracts and finally getting that chance for viewers around the world to see them, to see their work, and to spread their passion. So we are so excited about this virtual symposium. It is going to run from August 6th to September 24th. So yes, it is a much longer duration than our typical 4-day destination symposium. But this is a great way to not only spread out the information, but give people a chance to tune in when they're available. Even better, every single presentation will be recorded and archived on our TSA YouTube channel for you to be able to use as a resource going forward in gaining more turtle knowledge and maybe even joining or starting turtle initiatives of your own after being inspired by those talks. So please go to our website, turtlesurvival.org. There is a button right near the top, 2020 Symposium. Click on that so you can stay up to date with all the events surrounding this really, really unique symposium. There's a huge silver lining here. You know, we're sad that we don't get to see everybody face to face and have our normal conversations that we have, but in this time of pandemic and social distancing, this is going to provide us a way to engage with those who we may have never engaged with before. So we're really excited. Please stay tuned, and we can't wait to see you in August and September. All right, so today we are talking about the wonderful country of Colombia. And this is also an opportunity for you all to snicker at the way I pronounce some of these names. Spanish is not my first, it is not my second, it's probably not even my third language. But either way, I worked on the pronunciation of some of these names with the leader of this program, Herman Ferrero Medina. He got a good chuckle out of the way I was pronouncing a few of the names, but I'll do my best. And hopefully, I've invited him. Igor Valencia will be on the chat board. Igor, if you're there, please say hi to everyone. Igor is the lead turtle researcher for this program, and it will be wonderful to have him on and possibly be able to engage with you all as you ask questions during this webinar. All right, so let's talk about Colombia. As you can see from the graphic, it is located in northern South America, northwest to be specific. It borders the country of Panama to the north, separated by that canal that was built in the early 20th century. But it's an amazing country because it's right at the confluence of these ancient lineages of turtles from South America, basically meeting these newer lineages of turtles that are wandering down from the North American continent. So just to the specifics about Colombia, there are 35 species of turtle and tortoise, 36 total taxa, which if you watched before, that means species and subspecies. And amazingly, this country has 4 endemic species. That means that there are 4 turtles living in Colombia that only reside within the country. This is one of the most turtle-rich countries on Earth, and it's widely recognized as a strategic location for turtle conservation in South America. With its 36 terminal taxa, it is considered one of the world's turtle diversity hotspots. And again, if you've seen any of our previous webinars, especially Turtles Around the World, we focused a lot on those turtle diversity hotspots around the world. Okay, again, it's wonderful to see everyone tuning in. Thank you so much. Happy Friday. And I see some viewers coming in from Colombia. Let me see. Andrea, you're coming in from Barranquilla. Wonderful. Glad to have you on, and I'm so glad you're here to represent your beautiful and turtle-rich country. But this country plays a key role in the conservation of South American tortoises and freshwater turtles. And then your last bullet point, as I talked about, is that this incredible confluence of ancient and more newly arisen lineages of turtles coming together. All right, so let's talk about the TSA WCS. By the way, that's Wildlife Conservation Society, our largest and most collaborative partner throughout our range country programs. But let's talk about this program. So this program was launched in 2012 in recognition of the key role that the nation of Colombia plays in the conservation of tortoises and freshwater turtles, again, being one of the most turtle-rich countries on Earth. It is led by Herman Ferrero Medina, which is the program coordinator. That's him up there in the upper left, holding one of the amazing turtles that he works with. To his left, you have Igor Valencia, who is, again, our lead turtle researcher there. In the lower left-hand corner, you will see Isabella Estrada. She is our program officer. And then to her right, we have Carlos Saavedra, who is the species coordinator. This program is focused on the implementation of the strategic plan for the conservation of Colombian continental turtles. This was a meeting that was put together prior to the launching of this program that was organized and attended by many turtle researchers and conservationists from Colombia, South America, and abroad to focus on this strategic turtle diversity hotspot. This program, while it does work with many species, focuses on 4 priority species for which there are comprehensive research and conservation programs for. All right. So now you can see those 4 species and where in the country we work with them. Now, really quickly, I do want to say that those little turtle icons are not specifically the entirety of the range of these turtles, but it is where we focus on our conservation efforts and have these comprehensive programs for the turtles. In the upper left, you will see the Magdalena river turtle, Podocnemis louiana. This is a critically endangered endemic species to Colombia. It is found only within the Sinú and Magdalena river drainages and we work with them in the Cordoba and Santander departments of Colombia. Below that, you will see the Dunn's mud turtle. Probably one of the least known of the mud turtles, a rather small turtle. This is Kinosternon dunni, and we work with them in the Chocó department. To your upper left, you will see a really enigmatic and charismatic little turtle. This is the Dall's toad-headed turtle. A side neck turtle or a pleurodeiron. This is Mesoclemys dalli, and they are also a critically endangered and endemic species to the country. By the way, the Dunn's mud turtle is also one of the other endemics of the country. I forgot to mention that. We work with the Dall's toad-headed turtle in the tropical dry forests of northwestern Colombia in the departments of Cesar and Sucre. And then below that, probably one of the most widely known South American turtles. This is the giant South American river turtle, Podocnemis expansa. They, however, are a critically endangered despite being so well known and widespread. And we work with them in the Meta River in the Arauca department. All right, so let's first take a look at this cute little Dunn's mud turtle. I mean, seriously, look at that face. It is just, it is cuter than a button. Yeah, I said it, cuter than a button. But again, this species is a Colombian endemic. It inhabits the San Juan, Baudó, and Atrato river basins. It is currently listed as vulnerable by the International Union for the Conservation of Nature's Tortoise and Freshwater Turtle Specialist Group, the IUCN-TFTSG. Originally, it was described in 1947, just based on 2 specimens, 2 females in the Chocó department. From the early 1960s, when some previous research was performed, until 2011, so approximately 50 years, only 5 turtles of this species were observed in the field by scientists. So again, this is a very cryptic turtle. It lives in these dense forested river basins, and very little is known about it. In fact, it is, like I said, one of the least known species in the family Kinosternidae. It is threatened by a small geographic range, overall rarity, local consumption, logging, and gold mining. And I know many of you can't imagine consumption of a turtle this small, such as a mud turtle, but they are indeed consumed by locals within the Chocó department. All right, so what are our actions for this turtle, this endemic species? And although this is not an endangered or a critically endangered or even listed as a threatened species, it's really, really important that we regard all turtles in the same light. Of course, our conservation action programs are going to prioritize those that are endangered and critically endangered. But we must remember that species that we think of as common or vulnerable or those of least concern may not be so in the future. There may be environmental changes. There may be changes in socioeconomics within countries that cause these turtle populations to decline, and sometimes rapidly decline. So for the Dunn's mud turtle, it is endemic, and so it is a priority species. So the TSA sponsored surveys for this species in the Chocó department in 2011. This was to get baseline research on the turtle. And what's great is that these surveys yielded new locations and specimens. So they greatly added to our knowledge of this little Dunn's mud turtle. In this program, as our programs tend to do, was a collaboration, and it involves students and researchers from the Technological University of Chocó. Now, really quickly, by the way, take a look at that photo on your left. That is the habitat of the Dunn's mud turtle. Imagine doing surveys in that habitat that you see for this little turtle. Now you can imagine why so few localities and so few specimens have been found, and why we need to continue to perform not only research for this species, but to continue to protect these lands for the turtles and other flora and fauna that may be inhabiting them. All right, so more action. So a functional population was identified within a newly created Distrito Regional de Manejo de Integrado Encanto de los Manglares del Bajo Bado. So what this basically is the enchanted forest of mangroves within Bajo Bado. This was established in 2017 with participation and support of local communities, government institutions, non-governmental organizations, and nonprofits, including the Turtle Survival Alliance. And if you look at the map I've included on the screen, you can see the extensive range of this protected area right there along the Pacific coast in Chocó. So currently, the organizations are supporting a management plan that's focused on the sustainable use of natural resources and conservation of key areas in Chocó, including the habitat of the Dunn's mud turtle. All right, moving on. We're going to that really cute, that really charismatic turtle in which in recent years we have had some major developments for. But this is the Dall's toad-headed turtle, Mesoclemys dalli. And we work with this species in the tropical dry forest. It is critically endangered. It is endemic to Colombia. And this species inhabits heavily vegetated small water bodies within this tropical dry forest habitat. However, the range of the turtle lies completely within this tropical dry forest habitat, and it's one of the most heavily impacted and least protected ecosystems in Colombia. For those who love primates, this is also the habitat of the charismatic cotton-topped tamarin, a small species of callitrichid, which luckily I had the ability to work with at the Houston Zoo in Houston, Texas. So shout out for any of those from the Houston Zoo who are watching. I loved working with that species of primate. And of course, I love working with turtles. So we work with this species in Sucre and Cesar departments in northern Colombia. So the future of this species in those and other departments depends on conservation groups and local communities to protect and restore vital habitat, as well as genetic rescue and management. Again, we're talking about a landscape in which there has been significant expansion of agricultural and livestock plots of land, including pasture land. This also means that there is intrusion of those livestock into these small water bodies, which not only causes soil degradation and the consuming of the vegetation along the waterways, but it also provides for fecal contamination and utilization of the water, basically uptake, drinking of the water by the cattle. So these are all things that we take into consideration when developing management plans for the species. And speaking of which, I'm starting to get a little thirsty myself, so I will take a sip of my, I'm not even kidding you, for all of you who have watched my webinars before and you've seen me drink Red Bull and Coca-Cola Zero. Today, just for your pleasure, I decided to mix the two. So here we go. It's actually pretty tasty. All right, back to the turtles. So, actions for the Dawes-headed turtle in this highly impacted habitat of the tropical dry forest. So in 2013, the TSA and WCS team supported population monitoring of the species in Cesar in collaboration with the Institute of Natural Resources from the National University of Colombia. From 2014 to 2015, the conservation genetics study assessed genetic diversity and structure throughout the species range and established whether there are different management units based upon identified genetic structure and major demographic parameters. So what were the results from this study? Well, they were striking for many, but for a turtle who now lives in very, very small and fragmented habitats in isolated populations, they were what we believed could happen, and they did. So the results from this study showed that this species has high levels of inbreeding in all of the subpopulations, and that all of the populations had very low population sizes. For those who know about wildlife conservation and biology, you'll know that having small populations in which inbreeding is persistent throughout is very deleterious to the long-term survival of those species. All right, so Neoterrapin asks, and I think I know who Neoterrapin is. Hello, Stephen Chu. Good to see you on here. What's the difference between a tropical rainforest and a dry forest? So these two communities both are within South America, but they receive different levels of rainfall. And So the tropical dry forest is typically on the western slope of the Andes mountain range. And so they experience a different climatic conditions than those forests on the eastern side of the Andes mountain range. So east of the Andes mountain range, you have these your well-known tropical forests and savannas of the Amazon and Orinoco river basins. So the two habitat types vary greatly in their type of vegetation, the density of their vegetation, and also very much the species present. So that's kind of a general answer. If any landscape biologist on here wants to type in a really well thought out answer that goes above and beyond what I said, hey, feel free to. You know, this is, I want this to be an open forum. I always do, so that we can learn from one another, because we are a community, and we should all always act as a community, sharing knowledge with one another. All right, so that being said, the persistence of the species in the long term may require management in the form of genetic rescue to avoid deleterious effects of inbreeding. This management can only be done in a reserve where the population is guaranteed to persist. And this is because it will take sustained action to be able to continue this process. The other thing, again, is that there are very little protected areas in this part of Colombia for not only the species, but other species and these ecosystems they live in. So it's very important, and this is some foreshadowing, that a reserve is established for the turtle. And Peter Paul, I had a feeling Peter Paul would chime in to help me out. So the rainforest has rainfall in at least 10 months of the year, while the dry forest has a dry season without any rain for 3 or more months. Excellent. Thank you, Peter Paul, for chiming in there. All right, next up. So more actions for this. So the TSA WCS program began ecological restoration of the turtle's habitat on 7 properties in the municipality of Chimichagua in Cesar. This is to increase the species abundance by protecting and restoring riparian vegetation along the San Fernandera stream, utilizing both ecological restoration and sustainable livestock production criteria, install fencing along the stream's edge to keep cattle out, preventing, like I said before, fecal contamination, soil erosion, and allowing vegetative restoration. And then the action items of this are to repair and reactivate a local plant nursery. And what that does is that helps provide not only plants to help restore the riparian vegetation, but it also helps promote agroforestry, whereby larger plant species and varied plant species are planted in and amongst agricultural plots of land to increase the diversity. And it can also provide corridors for animal movement. Next and last in those action items is to build a watering system so that the cattle have an alternate water source. As I said before, the cattle are competition for this turtle, for the little standing or flowing water that resides within the tropical dry forest. So being able to give the farmers the ability to have alternate water sources for their cattle is very important for the long-term sustenance of the populations of this critically endangered turtle. To date, 30 hectares of land have been protected and restored along the San Fernandera stream, which is vital to this turtle in the Department of Cesar. And more importantly this started out as a conservation project by our organizations, but it has now moved in something that you want to see with conservation projects, so that the landowners have actually now taken over the responsibility of protecting this riparian zone through a conservation agreement. So you see this beautiful changing of hands from the conservation organizations to the landowners. And what's really important about this is it makes the landowners feel tied to this project, feel tied to the conservation and preservation of not only this turtle, but other wildlife that use those riparian corridors. All right, so again, there was some foreshadowing I did before. One of the main components for the preservation of the Dall's toad-headed turtle is to identify, purchase, and dedicate an entire reserve for this species. So from 2017 to 2019, a location that holds a relative abundance of the species, has some of the highest genetic diversity, and allows promising management of the reserve by a local community was carefully identified. The goal of this land acquisition initiative was to create the first protected area for this species. The land acquisition would then provide an area to implement these restoration efforts for the turtle's habitat in order to protect and manage the population for its long-term persistence. Anders says, I am impressed by the quick response and support from the DC city wildlife. Seems like they treat a lot of wild turtles. I'm looking at your previous comment. You found a nesting snapping turtle at the same spot for 25 hours, called Washington, D.C. City Wildlife, and an office came out within 20 minutes. She is now getting medical attention, and she has a fractured shell. Anders, that is wonderful news. I actually grew up for much of my early life in the Washington, D.C. area. There are actually lots of turtles and turtle species in and around Washington, D.C. So I'm really happy to hear that. And I'm really glad to hear of the quick response. It just goes to show you, that people do love these amazing animals. All right, so moving on, the reserve is established. So in December of 2019, the TSA Rainforest Trust and Wildlife Conservation Society officially secured a 120 hectare, 296 acre parcel of land. That parcel of land that had been meticulously searched for 3 years in San Benito Abad in Sucre. So our goal now is to optimize the newly acquired land. This reserve will undergo a process of habitat restoration, including wetland expansion and improvement, which increases the available habitat for the turtle. And additionally, to mitigate the inbreeding processes that we previously talked about, we will soon begin translocation efforts, moving individuals from some of those highly isolated populations to this reserve. This influx of new bloodlines will increase the long-term genetic viability of the reserve's population. The land acquisition, coupled with the forthcoming habitat and genetic management, will make the reserve the most important tool for securing a future for this unique Colombian endemic. So this was just really amazing news. Thanks so much to the Rainforest Trust and Wildlife Conservation Society and those who supported the securing of this parcel of land. Together, we're going to make a difference for the Dall's toad-headed turtle in Colombia. All right, so now we move on from our smaller forest and forested wetland and riparian streamside dwelling turtles to some of our more well-known and larger inhabitants of the country. So this wonderful turtle is the Magdalena River turtle, Podocnemis lewiana. And this turtle is critically endangered. It is a Colombian endemic. And as I said before, it is endemic to the Sinu and Magdalena River drainages. However, these drainages are technically separate management units for the species. And so our conservation actions are actually quite different depending on the management unit. This is the only podocnemid, the genre of turtles from which it comes, that ranges west of the Andes Mountains. The entirety of this turtle's range is to the west of this large mountain chain. All right, so I have a question from Mark D squared, our wonderful Canadian counterpart. Mark Dupuis Desalmes, are you replacing the turtles from the pools that are highly inbred and less protected? So a lot of those populations are highly vulnerable. Many of them reside only in small, quote unquote, cattle tanks or cattle ponds, and again, in non-protected areas. So members from those populations which are basically on the trajectory for extinction will be moved to this new reserve for not only the individual turtles protection, but for the long-term maintenance and proliferation of their genetics, giving more genetic diversity and turtle abundance to the reserve. As for the entirety of those turtle populations, if Igor Valencia is on, which I hope he is, I would love for him. Oh, whoops. Jennifer just noted that in this case, I accidentally spelled Magdalena incorrectly. I know it's spelled correctly in many areas, but yeah, you're right. Boom, there we go. Hey, I'm only human after all, okay? Though, some consider me part human, part machine. So yes, thanks, Jennifer. Jennifer, by the way, Jennifer Sofia Del Rio is one of the amazing turtle researchers and conservationists in South America. Much of her efforts focus on Podocnemis expansa, which is the giant South American river turtle, which, by the way, Jennifer, we are getting to next. So there is Igor. He just joined us, and he might be able to more thoroughly answer the question above from Mark D squared. All right, so moving on to the Magdalena River turtle. The Sinu River population is most threatened by hydroelectric dam influenced inundation of their nesting beaches, as well as livestock intrusion of those nesting beaches. Within the Magdalena River, the population is most threatened by collection for consumption. Again, these are large riverine turtles, and for a millennia, locals of these riverside communities would utilize the turtles for subsistence consumption. But as we know, human populations are ever expanding, and so as with the expansion of those human populations, turtle populations are being negatively impacted, especially when you consider such things as collection for consumption and other threats. Thanks, Jennifer. She's laughing hysterically at me. Wonderful. And by the way, isn't it supposed to be J-A, 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 J-A? Isn't it supposed to be? So Andrea says, we have hatchlings of Poragnemus lewiana at the Barranquilla Zoo. Awesome. That's wonderful. You know, a really great turtle. So I'm really glad to hear that you get to work with this species. Lastly, on this slide, the Sinew River population relies entirely on the WCS TSA program and our collaborating organizations for its persistence. Because of the hydroelectric damming of this river and the changes in the water levels, which includes the inundation of the nesting beaches, without the efforts that you are about to see, this turtle population would simply cease to exist within the river, as over time there would no longer be a recruitment of hatchlings, the next generation, into the population. All right, so let's talk about actions for this. And I see really quickly Igor is answering that question that Mark Dupuy had. So thank you very much, Igor. So our actions here for the Magdalena river turtle. Oh, and by the way, Jennifer, see Magdalena spelled correctly there. So again, the species experiences high egg mortality in the Sinew River basin due to hydroelectric dam water resources releases which flood the nesting beaches. So to reduce this loss, biologist Natalia Gallego created a community-based conservation program, Tortugas del Sinew, in 2006 to rescue nests from the flood-prone beaches and provide artificially created nesting beaches for the turtles to utilize. You can see the Tortugas del Sinew logo that I've inserted there on the slide. And by the way, I know many of you follow us, the Turtle Survival Alliance, on our website as well as all of our social media pages. But in addition to that, please follow our collaborating organizations and those community programs that are a part of our larger programs. You know, I just visited the Tortugas del Sinew Facebook page yesterday, and it's great to see that, you know, up-to-date information on what's happening there in the Sinew River. And by the way, that is a picture of Natalia there holding a large Magdalena River turtle. And as you can see, there is a radio transmitter attached to this turtle, and that is for performing radio telemetry to understand the movements and habitat utilization of this turtle species in the river. All right, so originally, as part of this program, the communities of Caño Viejo and Cotoca Arriba were involved in the nest protection program. So Tortugas del Sinew has 4 lines of action. In situ, which is in place, so within its place in nature management, where there is the building of artificial nesting beaches as sites for the turtles and the protection of females during the nesting season. These programs are very much focused on not only protecting the nests and the eggs, but also making sure that the females themselves, when they come up to nest, are protected from predators, which includes humans who might collect them for consumption. It's also ex situ management, which is out of nature. So that would be the rescuing of nests from the flood-prone beaches and incubating the eggs under controlled conditions. Monitoring the reproductive parameters of the species, and of course, so important, environmental education. It's really, really important, and this is something that these programs in South America and in Colombia have done so well, is promoting education and awareness of these species, involving the local communities in conservation, and just really creating a sense of community protection and preservation of these animals. I really quickly want to see what Jennifer Sofia Del Rio says. Podocnemus louiana is one of the species well studied here, thanks to Dr. Vivian Paez for a life of her efforts. Absolutely. Dr. Paez has performed amazing work in regards to research and conservation for the Magdalena River turtle. So hats off to her. And then Natalia, of course. We have data on acoustic communication, ecology, biology, etc. Okay, so Jennifer, thank you so much. That's awesome to hear. Jennifer and her colleagues have presented numerous times at our TSA symposiums, and hopefully they submitted some abstracts for this year's first ever but 18th annual virtual symposium. So I look forward to hearing more from you, Jennifer, and thank you very much for that additional information. Again, I love it when people who are directly involved with these programs and with these turtle species chime in, because we can't always get to all the information in these webinars. I know what most of you think, Jordan, you already talk too much. You're a rambling mess, but that is where I'm so appreciative for the people who work with these animals to be able to chime in, to share their knowledge and expertise with others watching. All right, so going on. So Tortugas del Sinew, a community effort. And again, follow them on their Facebook page. It's an amazing community program. It is currently led by Luis Carlos Negret. The communities build elevated beaches to imitate natural beaches in terms of location and the type of substrate. So giving these female river turtles additional nesting beaches as alternate places to nest than their traditional beaches, which are very much in flood-prone areas. So this program has created 3 artificial beaches that were both constructed and are continually maintained in the Cotoca Arriba area at Guamal, Benito Osorio, and Edmundo. In Cotoca Arriba, the beaches of Benito Osorio, Cotoca Arriba, and Guamal are monitored daily during the nesting season for nesting activity. But the thing is, like I said, all of these beaches periodically flood, so the nests are relocated. And I want to tell you why. So with some of the turtles that we've talked about in past webinars, they can experience inundation of the nests during the rainy or monsoon season. Not all turtles can do this. There are only certain species that have adapted over time to be able to undergo what's called a diapause, or basically an arrest in their development when water inundates their nests. In most situations, turtles and tortoises of various species, when inundated by water for an extended duration of time, we'll see mortality in the embryo. But for those species that undergo this arrest of development during the rainy or monsoon season, the embryo will then resume development once those floodwaters have receded. The Magdalena river turtle is not one of those turtles. Studies for this turtle have shown that after 36 hours of inundation of their nesting beaches, there is a 100% mortality of the developing embryos within the eggs. And that's why this program is so important. I cannot stress this enough. The creation of these artificial nesting beaches, the monitoring of the beaches, the relocation of nests from flood-prone areas, is so important for the persistence of this Colombian endemic in the Sinu River. And then lastly, I want to say that efforts are made to constantly monitor the natural beaches of Benito Osorio, Corrales Negros, Mopos, and Tranquilina. Jennifer, I hope I didn't botch those too badly. I noticed that I think I added an I in Corrales. I apologize. All right, moving on. All right, so Tortugas del Sinu, nest protection and relocation. Of course, this is the sexy part of conservation, we call it. You know, getting to hatch eggs, getting to watch these young turtles be released into the environment. This is the part that really tugs at people's heartstrings, and for many gets them involved in turtle conservation. So nests that are threatened due to risk of flooding, pillage or predation, or trampling by livestock are transferred to an incubation room in Cotoca Arriba. Those that are not are left in place and monitored daily to protect them from predators and, of course, during their hatching. In May of every year, local communities host public events at which between 500 to 2,000 hatchings are released annually. These events are attended by local and neighboring communities, school teachers and students, and environmental authorities. So again, really getting those communities in the next generation of the inhabitants of those communities not only interested, but invested in the conservation of this turtle. And the last statement there, and this is where, you know, all those efforts are summed up, is that in the past 8 years, this program has rescued or protected more than 840 nests and released more than 11,800 hatchlings into the river. So, you know, without this program, the fate of the Magdalena river turtle would be in serious question. So, Mark Dupuy always has a question. Thank you, Mark. I actually do appreciate it. Are there protection measures against predators at those artificial beaches? So this is a question that Igor might be able to best answer, but to my knowledge, the monitoring of the nesting beaches with human involvement is decreased just by human presence. But one of the other predators of these turtle eggs are ants. And so being able to monitor the beaches and then relocate nests that have been discovered and intruded upon by ants is very important. And then, like I also talked about, if you want to consider the hooves of cattle as a quote unquote predator of the eggs, although it's actually just an incidental take due to the weight of the cattle trampling on the sandy beaches. That is one in which, as I talked about, the fencing program alongside these beaches to keep the cattle out has been very, very effective. All right, so Jennifer says, ha ha ha, I imagine it's the same when I speak in English and you guys listen to me, so don't worry, it's funny. I know Spanish is complicated. I took German in high school. I'm actually terrible at that as well, so thank you for putting up with me with my pronunciation of some of these Spanish names. Paul Licht says, is there any data on the survivorship of released hatchlings? And I'm going to let Igor and possibly Jennifer be able to comment on that. Again, they are on the ground in these countries working with these species. And so I'm so glad that they're here to be able to help with some of these questions. So Igor, as you're watching, the next from Paul is if there is any data on the survivorship of the hatchlings. And also, Igor, thank you very much for also adding that the fences are, the nests are surrounded by fencing to help avoid predation and from intrusion by cattle. I can tell my mouth is getting dry from the way I'm stumbling over words. So another sip of my delicious sugar-free Red Bull and Coca-Cola Zero mix here. Again, this is just for all those who have watched previous webinars who know I switch between the two different drinks. And so I figured, why not make a concoction, okay? TGIF, thank goodness it's Friday. All right, moving on. I just want to show you this program. I want to show you just an assemblage of pictures that demonstrates the beauty of this program, that demonstrates the community activism. I mean, when I look at these pictures, I don't know, I almost feel at a loss for words, because this is what turtle conservation, this is what conservation in general is all about. Okay, it is getting people interested in the protection of these animals. It is getting people to dedicate their time to the preservation of these animals. It is getting people to share their passion with others in the communities to help bring them into that conservation fold for this species. And of course, there are pictures of absolutely cute hatchlings and the eggs from which they come, and of all the people that help make this program happen. So a couple answers have come in that I do want to read aloud. This is in reference to Paul's question of, is there any data on the survivorship of the released hatchlings? So Jennifer says, I have no idea about this project specifically. I know the project was led by Vivian Paez and Brian, and I'm not even sure how to pronounce that word, team in another area. And yes, they're doing very good monitoring. And then Igor, again, by the way, if you're just joining in or just recently joined in, Igor is the lead turtle researcher for the TSA WCS Colombia program. And he says, yes, we have data on the survival of released hatchlings with a mark recapture study that we perform each year. So thank you very much for both of you answering that questions. And Igor just mentioned that we do not use pit tags. It is through hard marking of the shells, I believe. And then Paul has now chimed in. And by the way, I love y'all just chatting back and forth. Again, this is what this is about. This is what I want these webinars to be about, is getting turtle people together and just talking. So Paul says, would survivorship be improved by head starting, whereby they're raised for a year or more before release? And I know Igor might chime in there, but just to answer your question, Paul, so throughout many of our range country programs, we do perform head starting as one of the conservation tools for some of the endangered and critically endangered species there. Oftentimes, we take a percentage of the hatchlings produced in 1 year and head start them. So for instance, in India, which we will get to later in this webinar series, about 10% of the hatchling red-crowned roof turtles, which is Batagur kachuga, are held back for head starting for about 6 to 8 months before being released, whereas in the other 90% are released at hatchling size. And this is very common throughout many of our range country programs. Peter Paul says Dick Vogt and his team are evaluating the effectiveness of head starting for Podocnemis expansa in Brazil, which, by the way, is the next turtle we are getting to. And he adds in that given that they demonstrate much parent to hatchling communication and association, head starting may do more harm than good. I remember a talk on this at last year's symposium, really questioning the efficacy of head starting for the genus Podocnemis because of the data that has been acquired on the communication between hatchlings and adults. So for those of you who don't know, Dick Vogt and other collaborating researchers and his students have worked on the research and conservation for the giant South American river turtle and other turtles in South America for many years. About 7 years ago, research demonstrated through hydrophones, excuse me, I was just stumbling over words there, through hydrophones that the turtles are indeed making sounds to one another. So communication perceived between the hatchlings and the females. And there are hypotheses of why this occurs. So the question was brought up, okay, so if you head start turtles in a ex situ environment, release them into the wild, these turtles will most likely, well, excuse me, I shouldn't say that. They will not have had that that communication at hatchling size, so as neonates, with the adults that they would have in the wild. And instead, they're being released directly into the wild. And so the question is, will this benefit the population to Head Start turtles, or will this be harmful to the population because you are releasing turtles who do not have this initial contact with the adults to potentially lead them to areas of better forage or better hiding, or involve them in migration routes along the sinuous meander of these rivers. All right, so, and Jennifer chimes in, agreed, Peter Paul, agreed. I like that. I love to see you all talking. All right, so because now we started talking about Podocnemis expansa, the giant South American river turtle, let's get to it. This turtle is also critically endangered. It inhabits the Amazon and Orinoco River basins. It is the largest freshwater turtle in South America. In Colombia, it is known as the Chiapas. Large aggregates of female turtles in Colombia are referred to as Cambodia Chiapas. They are largely exploited for their meat and eggs. Just a side note, I remember in the 1980s and 1990s growing up reading turtle books like those of Archie Carr, like those of Peter Pritchard, like those of Carl Ernst and others, and always remembering photos of people collecting the giant South American river turtle for consumption. It is, again, a large turtle, which for millennia prior to present day was a target of subsistence hunting by the natives of the region. But of course, as we talked about with the Magdalena River turtle, as human populations increase and those hunting pressures increase, consequently, the populations of the turtles decrease. All right, I want to see really quickly some of the comments here by Andrea. So yes, also there is a paper titled "A Plea to Redirect and Evaluate Conservation Programs for South America's Podunk Nematid Turtles." Jennifer then, okay, I'll get to that, Jennifer. So Jennifer says, I agree that head starting is okay only when it's super necessary, but we need to protect the adults, the females in the beaches, more than the eggs and the hatchlings. Okay, really quick, I think you all might have tuned in late, Jennifer and Andreas, but the region I have highlighted is where the TSA WCS program works on this species. These are not range depictions of the species, but rather the specific departments where our programs are based. So they are absolutely inhabitants of the Amazon and Orinoco River basins, but as far as our TSA WCS Colombia program for them, it is based along the Meta River in the Arauca department. There she goes. She says, "Okay, I got it. I knew you would. You're a smart one." And again, thank you. Igor just chimed in as well. See, this is why you all need to start at the beginning of my webinar, okay? So you can understand what my graphics are all about. I'm just kidding. You can tune in whenever you want. But yes, oftentimes when I make these graphics, they are referring to a general region, and especially in the case of this Colombia webinar, it is referring to the departments where we work with these animals. So please go back after this webinar is done. It will be archived on our YouTube channel for all to listen, watch, and share in the future. And you'll be able to go back and see the different departments in which the program works with the various species that we have highlighted here. All right, so getting back to it, this is one of the most heavily exploited species in the region. They once numbered in the millions across their range, but this range-wide population has now been reduced to what we believe is in the hundreds of thousands. So significant declines of this species, largely due to hunting adult turtles for their meat and the collection of eggs for consumption. Okay, so an action program is launched for this turtle. In 2014, the TSA WCS program, in collaboration with Fundación Omacha, launched a conservation initiative for the species on a section of the Meta River, like I just talked about, running through the Orinoquia region, home to the second largest known population of this species in Colombia. This effort now is part of a larger initiative led by the WCS and Ecopetrol, which, by the way, Ecopetrol is the largest producer of oil and petroleum products in Colombia, in which to conserve 10 landscape species in the country. And by the way, take a look at that top picture. So this is what is referred to as Cambodia Chiapas. This is a large aggregate of female giant South American river turtles along the Meta River and along the beaches in which they nest. So since 2015, this whole initiative is a part of what's called Proyecto Vida Silvestre. And you can see a picture below there of proudly displaying the sign for this project on the beach of the Meta River with many of its leaders and research technicians there. This program is focused on conservation actions along the Meta River in the location of La Virgen. Here, the citizens of La Virgen work alongside biologists to protect nesting beaches agreed upon by the community, protect nesting females, again, as a species that is collected for consumption. Protecting the females as they come up to nest is incredibly important to this initiative. Monitor the nests that have been laid, and of course, generate awareness and education programs. All right, I want to see really quick some of the comments that are coming in. Jennifer says, TSA, you're very welcome to come and see more projects in our country, of course, to help. There are other SPS that need to be studied, species, and protected. You know, I've had several requests for me to come down to South America and visit the programs, especially in Brazil. If my boss Andrew Wald is watching, once again, I'll just put out a shameless plea to send me down to South America. If he is watching, most likely I'll get the letters NO quickly replied to, but that's okay. We can all dream. And so Jennifer says, un super Cambote. Yes, it is. Just an absolutely incredible site. And what I want to mention really quick about these beautiful images of these Cambote along the river's edge is this is also an opportunity for these communities to develop ecotourism programs. This region is full of wildlife. It's full of flora. It's full of fauna. And this beautiful landscape in which the river flows through, and especially for those who love turtles and love seeing, you know, a once in a lifetime sighting of these large aggregates of giant South American river turtles. Ecotourism is absolutely a future priority for these programs to get people into the habitat, to get them interested, and of course, provide a sustainable income for those in the villages that help protect these turtles, as well as those in the villages who might rely on these turtles as a food source to give them a source of alternative livelihood. All right, so protecting the Chiapas, a community effort. More than 15 families in La Virgen participate in the surveillance and monitoring of the nesting beaches. Juan Moyatan is recognized as the most committed community member of this cause. And by the way, if you want to learn more about Juan Moyatan and his passion, please go to our website, turtlesurvival.org, and become a member. And the reason why is because in this past year's edition of Turtle Survival magazine, we highlighted the work of Juan Moyatan. He is somebody who is just absolutely dedicated to this program in La Virgen and dedicated to this project and the persistence of the turtle. So become a TSA member. Shameless plug. No, it's not shameless. Okay, you should become a TSA member anyway because you love turtles and their conservation. But by becoming a TSA member, the wonderful Emily Kiefner will ship you one of our 2019 Turtle Survival magazines directly to your door. And by the way, becoming a TSA member in 2020 will also get you our upcoming 2020 Turtle Survival magazine. All right. Peter Paul says, Jordan, tell Andrew that your work will be so much more effective once you have seen the field programs with your own eyes. Yeah, that's what I think too. And then Jennifer says, by the way, Vivian and me are looking for money to work with Podocnemis vogui, a very interesting species. Sorry, I have to go down and squint. So please don't forget us. All right, I think we need to talk more about South America, don't we? Ding, 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 Andrew Walden, Rick Hudson. We have some wonderful conservationists who are very much dedicated to these animals. So maybe this is a chance to chat more in the future about increasing the conservation efforts for South America's turtles. I'm still hung up on Peter Paul's comment because I think it's a really good one. Really good one. All right, so going back, the community members who are really dedicated to this project in La Virgen are known as the adoptive parents of the Chiapas. They're a group of 10 men and 1 woman who have recruited now themselves close to 25 village members to join them as guardians of the turtles. And again, this just shows the beautiful community involvement to get involved with protecting this species. As guardians, they help to monitor and protect the nesting adult female turtles between the months of December to March, which is the typical nesting season for this species in the region. All right, so signs of success. And by the way, speaking of signs, look at this mural. If that's not a sign of conservation awareness, I don't know what is. This is actually painted by Juan Moyatan and others on the side of his house to raise awareness for the conservation of the flora and fauna of the Meta River. So absolutely gorgeous. I hope to see it in person one day myself. So signs of success because of these actions, because of these families, these citizens, these adoptive parents, these guardians of the turtles. Female and nest harvesting from humans has dropped to nearly 0 on the monitored beaches. Harvesting has been significantly reduced in communities within the proximity to the project due to education and awareness. Now in some of those beaches in which have been harvested over the years, less than 1/3 of the nests are now harvested of those beaches not under surveillance. In the coming years, the program will work with the communities to develop strategies that allow them to benefit from the conservation program. As I already talked about, ecotourism, but also as demonstrated with some marine turtles, such as the Ridley turtles in Central America, as they come up to nest in their large arribadas, to develop a harvest model for the eggs, which will allow the communities along the river to use this resource that they have used for hundreds, if not thousands of years in a sustainable and legal fashion. And again, this is building on using this conservation tactic, this conservation tool for other species in which the harvesting of their eggs has negatively impacted their populations. All right, and of course, a new generation of turtles, the impacts of this. So the community of La Virgen has protected an average of nearly 1,000 females in their nests per year. The next bullet point is going to blow your mind. Just in the few years of this program's existence, 262,215 hatchling turtles have been released into the river since its inception. In 2019 alone, the program produced over 117,000 hatchlings. So this is seeing large recruitment of neonates into the river. But I want to just really quickly talk about, not just from a turtle perspective, but how important this is for the entire ecosystem of the river. As you recall me saying, this species once occurred in the millions across its range. That being said, the recruitment of neonates into the ecosystem is not only very important for the persistence of the turtle itself, but also very important for those animal species who rely upon the hatchlings as a food source. Now, I know many people don't want to think of hatchlings, turtles, as a food source, but when we think of the overall impact of turtles on the environment, we have to remember that indeed those hatchlings do and have for millions of years served as an important food source for other predators within those communities. So not only are those large influxes of turtles now going back into the river helping the turtle, but they are also concurrently helping other wildlife in the river. Now, really quickly, let's think about statistics. There's a commonly used statistic that about 1 in 100 hatchling turtles will survive to adulthood. Of course, this varies greatly. There are many factors that influence the statistic probability of a turtle surviving to adulthood. But let's just say for fun that 1 in 100 turtles, okay, 1% of turtle hatchlings survive to adulthood. That means that with 262,215 hatchlings now going into the river over the last few years, that could potentially have produced, based on that model, nearly 3,000 new juveniles and subsequently adults for that population. So this is a very, very important program to restore the natural balance of the giant South American river turtle and the ecosystem in the Meta River. Peter Paul, absolutely, yes. 250,000 hatchlings just in the few years of this project. Now, something I want to say for the year 2020 is that the program focused solely on protecting the adult females this year from any poaching, and then allowed the nests to just remain in the sand unmonitored this year. So we don't actually know how many hatchlings will be produced from this year. Overall, the number of nesting females was lower, and in talking with Herman, it's believed that there was some migration of this cambote of females which resides in that area, and that they potentially nested on a different beach, or possibly that this is a down year in their nesting cycle. Still, however, that being said, Igor hypothesizes or estimates that roughly 20,000 hatchlings will still enter the river this year based on the number of nesting females that was protected. Okay, and lastly for this program, at the end of the reproductive season, the community organizes a symbolic release event with the participation of other communities, members of the government, media, and other environmental organizations to demonstrate the importance of this program. And most importantly, I've highlighted, engage citizens in its work for the turtles' conservation. Okay, I have worked with these kind of community programs firsthand. I know how passionate the people are. I know how passionate new people become, and I know the difference that this can make for a turtle population. So that is just what I want to highlight. And you know, in talking with Herman, in talking with Igor, you know, this program in Colombia is just incredible. And you know, we've spent nearly an hour and a half here today, and still there's a lot that I wasn't able to get to. You know, there's so many components of these programs, so many intricate details and nuances that are fascinating. So I recommend you to please get involved with these programs. Inspire others to get involved. Stay tuned with updates from these programs. Like I said, don't just follow the TSA on our social media programs, although of course we would love you to, and of course our e-newsletter, but also follow our collaborating organizations. See how everybody comes together for the betterment of conservation, for the betterment of turtles, for their long-term survival. And you'll be able to see the real impact in real time as all these collaborating organizations, you know, share photos and share stories. It's not only touching, it's inspiring. All right, I want to see some of these questions coming in. Peter Paul says, and when the beach stays protected, the turtles will move back. They're not stupid. They know where the nesting is good. Absolutely. Okay, these animals, the genus Podocnemus is from an ancient lineage, you know, tens of millions of years old. And so these turtles just, they have these instincts ingrained in them. Once the beaches become protected, they know where to go. I've seen it firsthand, where just, you know, beaches are not, some beaches are protected, others are artificially created, and the turtles just come to them. I mean, I've seen artificially created beaches in areas where turtles didn't even nest before, and yet the next season, there they are, turtles nesting on these artificially created and protected beaches. They just know they're there through instinct, through changes in the environment in which they are able to pick up, as being so intricately a part of that environment. It's so cool. All right, so lastly, I do want to say thank you. Of course, thank you to all for watching, and thank you all so much to all the organizations, the companies, the communities, and especially the citizens, the people who make these conservation programs work. There are many here to name. Again, if you want to look for your program who has sponsored these initiatives, please check out the YouTube video at a later date and look for your program's name. I hope I got them all included in there. If you're not in there, I would love to know, because I want to make sure that your organization, your university, whatever it may be, is highlighted for the conservation of turtles in Colombia and around the world. So I want to say thank you all very much. If there's any last questions, I'd be glad to take them. And I know that we do still have Jennifer, Igor, and Peter Paul on the line here, who are very knowledgeable about the turtles of South America, and who I know are glad to help me answer any of those questions that I might not be able to. So I do see one coming in. How can I get involved with this program? I'm not sure. I'm not even sure how to actually pronounce your YouTube handle name, but so in Colombia, one can contact us at info@turtlesurvival.org, so that we may best put you in touch with the conservationists there in Colombia, who can direct you towards getting involved with these amazing community programs. All right, Mike, you're welcome. Thank you very much for joining. Bob, absolutely, you're welcome. Thank you. Jennifer, loved you being on. Loved you being on. And I can't wait to see you again in person, hopefully next year, whether it be in South America, hint, hint, or whether it be at the 19th annual Symposium for the Conservation of Tortoises and Freshwater Turtles. So I appreciate everybody saying thank you. Always great to see everybody. Sumi Akui, you're just now joining in. You're late. How giant typically do those giant river turtles grow? So this is a very large species. I don't have the exact record on hand right at this time for this turtle. Jennifer, Igor, or Peter Paul might be able to chime in here for the both the average and historical record for the carapace length of Podocnemus expansa. There we go. Igor's right in there, 80 centimeters. Okay. And Peter Paul says about 50 to 60 centimeter shell length. Some individuals get even bigger than that, as evidenced by Igor's comment of 89 centimeters. So this is a very large turtle. It is the largest freshwater turtle in South America, one that I know people love and want to see preserved on the landscape. Sumi Akui says, I was silently listening. You're normally so active and engaged. So, hey, but I do appreciate you being here, and I appreciate you chiming in here at the end. So thank you all very much. If you have any further questions, once the video becomes archived on YouTube, which is only a matter of hours, feel free to ask the questions on the YouTube video platform, and we will be glad to answer them. And yes, that is absolutely almost like sea turtle size. You're completely right. Yeah, even larger in cases with some specimens of some taxa of sea turtles. So thank you all very much. TGIF, everybody raise your mix between different drinks that normally people don't mix. And I will see you all next week as we go to Madagascar. So TSA Around the World continues next week at 11 a.m. On the island nation of Madagascar. And Peter Paul, having been there myself, I hope I can speak with even more passion and knowledge of the programs there. So thank you all very, very much, and take care. Happy turtling.